Well, we have a specificity, and this is that we have so far a multi-annual financial framework, de facto a 7 years budget. The current one is from 21 till 27. And 2 days ago, we started a public reflection process in Brussels for the next multi-annual financial framework. And I mean, since we discussed the last one, the world has changed. And also the union has to adapt to it. Traditionally, the union was very much focused on itself, but now it's important to understand that we have to position ourselves in a global competition.
Nice.
And this has to be reflected also in the budget, because the budget is, or politics are cast in figures. And that's why we have to invest more in competitiveness.
Okay.
Furthermore, in research, for instance, artificial intelligence, like here, is extremely important for us. We have a lot of expertise in the quantum research area, but also due to the recent developments, 2 wars in our vicinity, if I may say, triggers the need to have a much more or a much bigger defense budget.
Speaking of defense budget, you said, and I quote here, Europe should no longer leave its security largely in the hands of the US.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this and which countries are advocating for this approach?
It's part of what I usually say. Europe has lived for decades in 3 comfort zones. The first was cheap energy from the East, particularly Russia.
Nice.
Second, security protection provided by the US. And thirdly, rather cheap technology from Far East. All this, let's say, de facto guarantees are no longer there. And that's why we have to be much more sovereign and autonomous, but not in the way that we are decoupling ourselves, because Europe is the most international continent in the world. So, but we have to cooperate, we have to form alliances, we have to look for partners which believe, like us, in a global world order, which is based on rules, on agreements and contracts, which are respective, and in the case there are, so to say, differences, there is a arbitration and the outcome is respected. And here again I see strong allies in the region and with the region on this, and this has to be also reflected in our budgetary structure for the future.
Who's supporting that from the 27 member countries?
Well, in principle, everybody, because it's so obvious.
Good.
Yeah?
Good.
But it means that the future budget must be very different from the current one, because the current one is very much reflecting this inward-looking principles. And now we are going global. And this means either we have to restructure the budget or we have to add something to the current one. But I have to say the European budget is more or less equal to 1%
of the GDP.
Of the European GDP. National budgets are between 30 and 40%. So it is something, but if we want to have a European added value, I think it's
you need to spend more.
Well invested, well invested.
In your mind, what are the comprehensive economic challenges facing Europe today? I know it's different from where you sit in Europe, but what are the top 3 for the bloc?
Well, it's about our global competitiveness.
You think you're not doing great on that front, especially when it comes to other global players?
No, I think the issue is simply the European market, the European economy is a rather mature one. Other parts in the world are catching up. So I think it's about us to defend somehow the position we had and we have, meaning that with 5-6% of the global population, we are still producing 15-60% of the global economic output. We are very successful in innovation, in research, but we have to do more to transfer research and innovation outcomes into business cases. So we need more venture capital. This is also a reason why I'm here, because on the, so to say, development side of business cases, we are quite good, but so far the European economy is very much depending on financing by banks, which we would like to change in order to have more venture capital available, in particular to promote new developments. Because we have a lot of startups which sometimes are sold to companies outside Europe, which is not something bad, but I would like to have a good mixture.
Whenever we discuss the European economy, I keep hearing feedback from different stakeholders, decision makers, CEOs, executives, and so on. And they always say Europe is slow in taking the important decisions. How do you answer that?
It's partly true, because we are a democracy, yeah? And many people are participating in the shaping and in the final decision making. But once we take a decision, you can count on it. So Europe is extremely predictable. We have probably the highest rule of law standards in the world. So people can rely on the independence of the judiciary. So for investors, it's extremely important to know that everybody is treated equally. We have a high level of educated people. But of course, one of our, I would say, impediments is a perceived bureaucracy. This is something we have to address. We try to do this also in the next budget, because it's also about, let's say, a mental change. If we have less programs, if we have less regulations, it will trigger, so to say, more activities.
It's amazing what you're saying. It's very refreshing, because you know, part of solving a problem is admitting that you have a problem, and you have a completely different approach to this, which is great. You've been commissioner for 14 years. You've served 3 terms, and you are leaving soon.
You can see it, yeah.
Yeah. I think you've served Europe enough. Today, or given the changes in the recent years and the rise of new powers and the shifts in the dynamics in the world, how do you picture the new economic landscape of the world? And one last thing I want you to answer. Are you worried that Europe will be left behind, sir?
Well, first I have to say, if I look back these 14 years and even further down the history, Europe has always proven to be there, to react, and to agree about something once we are challenged. So I think probably we are the continent who managed best the pandemic. We developed in record time not only vaccine, we managed joint purchasing, and we introduced within a couple of weeks, technically and from the regulatory side, and you know, in Europe it's very much about data protection. We are very sensitive on it. E-tool for vaccination, which is now applied by 70 countries around the world. So the evidence is that whenever we are challenged, we can react. I have to admit, of course, I would like to see a reaction, future-oriented decisions, future policy shaping without this external pressure, but maybe it's very human.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining Sky News Arabia today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.